don't lie to an actor. We know what the truth is. We know better than any. We are accused of being liars all our lives, and we are not liars.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Melissa Leo is an actor. She sat down with me in New York City to talk about the work.
You land the role, you get the script. What's the first thing you do?
Well, you've said it already, it's the script. That's the way that I was taught by Joan Potter at SUNY Purchase. The lesson that, one of the many lessons I took away from her is that is the beginning. It's why I have a little bit of a difficulty with the notion of the improvised film. It can work. There's a really sweet little film that I made, or that I'm in, I should say, better put, called Francine, that was really just ever a 10-page synopsis of an idea, list of scenes, sort of. And amazingly, with a lot of arduous hard work, a very nice little film came out of that. But for me, the process begins with the script. I have, and other actors concur, that, you know, like you do the audition, or you get the interview, or you hear about the possibility, and then you say, yes, you'll take that job, and you say, oh, you got the job, and you get a phone call from your agent or somebody like that, and you got the job. And then some weeks later, sometimes only days, you get a call from the costume assistant asking for your sizes. Mm-hmm. And now you know you have a job.
Yeah. That's when you really know.
And that's an interesting, so then by and large, in the filming world, theatrically it's different, but in the filming world, that's your first meeting. Even more so than time with the director. My first step on most sets I've ever worked on, I've had a script and a meeting with a costume designer, and a fitting. And I have come to ask the designers, how closely have they chosen these, how closely are they working with the director? Is it a director that's just like, oh, you decide, honey, or somebody who's, really involved, telling me then, because I'm really interested in, because of some experiences that went the other way, where everybody's making a different movie, I'm really interested in figuring out what film is the filmmaker making. Mm-hmm. Let's work on that picture altogether. Mm-hmm. And then in theater, there's this wonderful process that so many actors who go straight to film miss out on, where you literally sit around a table with the script cracked open, page by page through the script, interrupting ourselves all the time, sometimes with seemingly completely unrelated stories from our lives that turn out in the long run to be extremely important stories from our lives to have shared intimately with this group we're working with. And that's one of the most delicious things about doing theater, is that breaking down of the script you do as a group all together with a leader we call the director.
And I'm sensing in that there's some kind of wish that was more like what prepping for a film would be like there's something lost there. Like why don't you all sit down in the prepping for a film? Well,
because for film you don't want to rehearse. You don't want to do that thing that we do once we leave the table stage and get up on our feet and find the blocking and then begin to run the play in rehearsal, or just scene by scene running it, feeling it out, director watching, talking about it, feeling it out, doing it again, finding it, so that by the time you are in the theater and do your tech and go into your dress rehearsal and the next night you open, you have a sense of these things you're gonna hit to be able to get from Act 1 to Act 3. In film, because there's this magical machine that comes with us, that is, according to native people, stealing our souls, which it might well be, recording it, you don't want it to have happened in another room, in another time, because the magic of film is it can record something that may only ever happen once. A lot of actors, Sean Penn comes to mind, one take. So if you haven't got it, something the matter with you. You know, I think it takes a fair amount of experience to feel secure that you'll get every scene in one take. But
Right.
so rehearsal for film then becomes this sort of push me, pull you kind of animal. That's there's things you can do in preparation, but it fits much better into sort of a pre-production idea. And oddly, actors are not included in pre-production unless you're on as a producer. And in my experience doing that, they sort of think that's a joke title and don't really include the information that over 30 years of working in the industry might be able to share.
and benefit the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
So what has to happen so there is a magic that happens when the film starts running, when someone presses the button on the thing. What do you do as an actor to prepare for that moment? Because there's 1,000 things going on. You may be having a really bad day. The set might be very uncomfortable, you know, with people are weird or whatever. But the magic has to happen at that moment. What do you do to prime it up so that it's ready to go when it has to be?
Well, one of the things that the method teaches us is if you're tired and had a bad day, you're tired and had a bad day. The suggestion being that might be what the scene needs. The page says you're crying. Oh, there's tears streaming from your eyes. And they're not, because it's not happening. It's not really the actor's job to make it happen or get the makeup artist to come and blow something into your eyes to make. Maybe there's something much more interesting going on. And maybe the person's saying there's tears streaming out of your eyes, and there's not. Are they seeing something? Are they permanent? I mean, it's maybe a ridiculous example, but it can unfold a whole other thing, and then at least you're doing this thing that is the actor's job, which is to pretend the truth. And if what my truth is a crummy morning that's brought me to the set in a foul humor, maybe that's what it needs. In my experience, I am so literally wedded to my work. It is my partner. I work in ways that are dangerous to talk about because there are things that my instrument does that I don't do on purpose. I can't not think about it. I shot a short with Courtney Hunt and Misty Upham, and after the short was completed and Courtney sent me this DVD of it and said, hey, that's a good little short. She said, do you want to make a feature? And she sends me the feature script of Frozen River. So for 3 years, I've got this idea of this magnificent character, a character I have not seen before or since. And she's with me. Ray Eddy is with me all that. I don't know if we're ever going to raise the money to make the film. But for 3 years, Ray Eddy is with me. That woman with bangs, she looks like Ray Eddy. That woman with bangs, she looks like Ray Eddy's got to have bangs. To learn to listen to your gut is a good way to prepare. To listen to your head and think, oh, I must produce these tears. How do I produce these tears? It's going to get you in a pretty tight spot. So the first thing is to know yourself well enough to know where you are at as you walk on the boards. And then that's when all the acting classes and techniques and everything come in handy, as if you need to get out there at a level 8 and you can barely get yourself to a level 2. There's tricks, there's ways to get yourself there, and then eventually you'll find that work sort of takes over.
What do you personally need from a director on a set?
I need them to know what they're doing, even if they've never done it before. I need them to know what they're doing. I need them to know, like Denis Villeneuve, whose English when we shot Prisoners it's probably got better English now. But it was great. I don't speak any French, and he spoke poor English. We really had to stop and listen to each other and understand. And then he would say to me, "Will you give me a minute?" And I'd go to the other side of the set. I'd see him with his head bent and his hands. And he'd come back to me with an answer. With a real answer. He didn't know when I asked him the question. He barely understood the question. But he didn't take offense that I was asking a question.
Yeah. And he didn't make up something right there.
He didn't make up something right there to placate me.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me, "Oh, never mind about that," because he hadn't thought about it yet.
So if I was directing you, and I mean, I could make you believe that I know, and that would be fine.
That might be enough.
Yeah. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I mean, it's because there's a lot of not knowing that has to go on.
I'm not afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
That's the other part about it, right? Like a lot of people are really afraid of not having the answer.
Yeah.
And that's where the work is where you don't have the answer. All the rest of it that's easy. It's when you don't have the answer, when you can barely find the question, that's where the work lies that needs to happen. One of the things I notice about directors, however, is that by and large, directors working today, just like first-time directors, have never been on anybody else's set except their own.
Yeah.
And the dolly grip knows more about filmmaking than the director.
Yeah.
And you learn who on the set you feel you can trust in that way. And I'm not just saying that. There have been sets I'm on, and I'll look over at the dolly grip and, "Yeah, no, we need to do that one more time."
I love that example.
It also happens in costume fittings, because very often costume designers are designers. They're not people who know clothing and fabric, right? They're not the builders of the costumes. And when the seamstress comes into the room, because I need to be pinned for something or something like that, I know if it's a costume that's working or not, because the seamstress knows. The costumer is still full of, the designers can be quite still full of their ideas. Now there's wonderful costume designers too.
Yeah.
But, it's, you just learn who. Toby Jones said to me, "Don't lie to an actor." We know what the truth is. We know better than any. We are accused of being liars all our lives, and we are not liars.
Talk to me about this new film, which I loved, Unlovable. I just loved it. It caught me off guard how much I loved it. And I think it's important.
Important, I agree.
And sometimes those two don't go together. And when it does, it's nice. When you yourself come into a scene, you take the tension out of the scene, and I mean that in a good way. Sometimes tension is good, but I feel abused as an audience member because I can see people acting. I don't see you acting. You can't tell me why.
Most people feel quite awkward. What I know better than most is when the camera comes into the room changes.
Yeah.
I too change. Every actor changes. What an actor learns is to do that thing you've already mentioned of using it, right? Rather than fighting against it and feeling awkward about it. I have an added bonus because I am a very uncomfortable human being. And acting makes me comfortable.
Very interesting. You mean that
I like to be told what to say and what to wear and who I am and what I'm doing there. I like that kind. I like direction. And we, at the best of it, are not directed in life. And as an interesting, although alternative upbringing that I had, I was definitely not directed. So I don't know so good how to be a people as Melissa. Give me a character, give me a role in a, like a thing to do in Unlovable. I'm this woman that young Joy thinks she can look up to, who is actually not so sure anybody should be looking up to her. And so that's a lot of great information. Now I can begin to, as I say, hang my hat on that and find that character. And I can talk to you now about acting, but get a room full of people talking about Election Day or movies, or I don't have much of anything to add to the conversation.
So how did this come to you? Like, this is
I am a part of Unlovable 110% because of Susie Unissi. I think that, then as I grew to know what the project was, the bravery of Char to have gone online with her own personal horrendous, life-threatening mistakes and go public in the way that she did online, to have a huge following that would prompt her then to write this script. Mark Duplass's great genius in picking it up in the moment that he did, supporting her. And the thing that makes Unlovable the film that it is, this watchable, enjoyable, important film about this really not spoken about. We speak about homosexuality and trans this and that and racial this and that, but sex, not just amongst youngsters, but the over-abuse of sex in our world, it's just not spoken of. And this film, although it's not a teaching tool, it's a motion picture, but it actually ends up being this incredibly valuable tool to have a conversation about this really unspoken subject that affects everyone in one degree or another. And if it's not the addiction to love and sex, then it's an addiction to some other thing. The ways in which it's depicted in the film that drugs and alcohol play a part in her love and sex addiction. It's just an extremely important thing. Susie Unissi has this light, dare I say it in the world today, girlish quality about her and her sensibility. I know Susie very well. She's a close friend, her and her family, dear, dear friends of mine. I've known her since she was a student at Columbia, and she asked me to be a part of her thesis film. Again, that sense of knowing, I just knew when I worked on that very different kind of thesis film. Most of the students at Columbia write their own scripts. Susie said, I don't have time to write a script, I want to make a movie. And she found a one-act play and adapted it for her thesis film. And I've been in, I think I did like 3 different short films with her. I did her first feature, Dear Lemon Lima, and now this feature with her. Susie Unissi is what takes this idea of a story and makes it the film that you saw, Unlovable. The casting of me, the casting of John Hawkes, the ability to work with young, delightful Char, who had never really worked that way before. and so deeply personal. A very, very hard thing for any actor to do, to really tap into a real truth.
Right.
Much easier to play something
Right.
a bit distant from you. Susie's cautious eye in the editing room that helped really put the film together in its most tasteful and delightful way. It's a fascinating little film made with a tiny itty-bitty budget and a small amount of time,
Yeah.
but with an incredible talent force behind it.
You just said before, you hinted at how important your work is to you. What do you do when you're not actually working to feed the inner actor in you?
I think the most important thing for an actor to have, oddly enough, is a self-knowledge. And I've worked on that for so long that the acute lack of self-awareness most human beings have makes it very frustrating for me to walk in the world. And so that's what I work on, and at different times in different ways, whether it's a more strenuous form of exercise, Bikram yoga that I did years ago, or yin yoga that I've found more recently, meditation that comes along for me with the yoga work, talking with others, talking in truthful and deep ways. I don't waste my time with for the most part, talking about the weather and politics, and I like to talk about we as a species. And the people that I connect with are people who are interested in that kind of depthy talk. So primarily there's that sense of work on self, physical, mental, spiritual work on self. Not in an ego-driven kind of a way, but seeking self-knowledge, knowledge of self. I think is very, very important, because that then is the actor's neutral from which you can expand in all directions. Work in a garden, with your hands in the dirt, all of those kinds of things, and working with human beings in other ways as well, with children, with old people. The things then, I guess, the other side of it are the things that get you out of yourself. Self-knowledge, self-introspection, self-awareness, and things that get you out of yourself.
A lot of people, in the past, they may have gotten worried as they get older in this business, but it seems like those days are not like they used to be. Like, there's so much great roles. Is this not true?
I would like to agree with you on that. I really wish that I could fully agree with you on that, but I have come up against a problem post Alice Ward, and that is a notion of that I am a woman of a certain age now, and I'm not going to be asked to play Juliet. And I was so shocked when I was asked to play the nurse that I couldn't consider it, and have thought back and thought, oh geez, I should have played the nurse. That was silly of me. But it was just so shocking to me to be asked now, never having been asked to play Juliet, to play the nurse. I was never, I've said this before in interviews, I was never the prettiest girl in the room. That wasn't what was going to get me work. And very oftentimes it was what made me lose the part, when it was me or her. And she is, each time, clearly the conventionally prettier of the two of us. Self-knowledge. I'm no dog, but I also know plenty of girls way prettier than me. But my mother wouldn't allow vanity. in her daughter. So I don't walk in the world with a vanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more interested in range as an actor. And I have always approached my work, I find out now, in retrospect, that I've always approached my work much more like a male actor would. I don't think there's anything male about me. I'm all girl, but I've approached my work more the way. So it's not about how I look, it's more for me, am I right for the part?
Mm-hmm.
Which has a little bit to do with how you look, but not in Hollywood terms, how you look. And that in recent years I have been asked on a couple of occasions to play a woman of a certain age. Well, that's appropriate. But now she's angry and frustrated and nasty and mean. Okay, I could believe that if I knew why she had become so angry and nasty and mean. But they never tell that part of the story. She gets blamed for being the ruination of her children's lives, for being such a nasty old ogre. But nobody's telling the story of how she became that way. In a little way in Frozen River, you see that. You see this woman struggle to raise her kids in a decent way.
Yeah.
And those stories, for my money, are not stories that are told. And very oftentimes, the things that I get complimented on for my work are things that I've had to insert in between the lines. Alice Ward. No, not a bitch. A woman with very little income in a very depressed area in the country with 9 children from 2 or more men. Where are they now?
Yeah.
The conditions that make her so, I will include them whether the filmmakers included them or not.
Interesting.
Out of respect for human beings.
Yeah. Melissa Leo, thank you so much for this. I
No,
really
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
No, thank you so much, really.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. It's produced by Spencer Rain. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.